All right. Hello and welcome everyone to the third session. This is my absolute favorite session, design, which is the let's see, fourth of the five phases of the 5D process, the AI process. So I'm really excited about design, and our purpose, we know, of this 4-session course is to learn practical, applicable ways of integrating appreciative inquiry and visuals into meeting design. So I know that this has been a fire hose, and I know some of you love that. And for those of you who are watching the video saying, wow, this is a lot, just take what you need. Just take what inspires you in this moment and come back to this if you want to come back and learn more, because some of this might be as simple as drawing simple icons when you're taking notes. Some of it might be thinking about a conversation you want to have and what kind of template can you create to help guide that information or that conversation and to gather information. So really, it's really up to you. And today's session is really to experience a visual template firsthand, which you did yesterday with the appreciative resilience, but really about customizing some of these templates. So I'm going to show you some case studies, give you some hopefully topics of inspiration to keep you fed. And so how are we going to do that? I'm going to show some key takeaway compositions. This is if you're taking your own notes. You know, we have that 5D process should you want to use that as a format, but I have some other sort of sketchnoting type formats that I can share with you. And I'm going, again, I don't have it on here, but I am going to show you some customized visual templates that I created to meet the desired outcomes of my client. And hopefully, if you have brought your agenda or your meeting purpose or something, we can co-create what that might look like as well for your client and their desired outcomes. And our payoff today is hopefully you walk away with more visual templates and inspiration to customize your own visuals. All right, so I'm just going to dive right in and start with composition. And you'll notice there's 4 here, and 3 of them may or may not really apply to you. These are really part of a sketchnoting class that I teach. If you're interested in that, I'm happy to give you access to it. It's just how to sketchnote. It was for artists and calligraphers mainly. That's who it was designed for. But this third composition about key takeaways is a great way. Say if you are in a meeting and you're going to do minimal writing, but you just want to have something to write down and have some kind of a composition. On the left-hand side, this is a calligraphy tool. You might have your own drawing or no drawing. At the top, you might have the title of the event or the meeting or whatever the topic is. You don't have to have instructor, but if you have a guest speaker, maybe you're writing down a couple of things that they're saying, or a leader in the organization. And on the left, that's where we really do some drawings or some detailed notes, some captures of what people are saying. And then on the right, might be where you put some key takeaways, some key points, maybe some high level things that kind of distill what's on the left. And I'm going to talk about the learn, do, thank either today or tomorrow. And that's just a good, what did we learn? What are we going to do differently? And what are we grateful for? And of course, anytime I do any kind of sketchnoting, I always put the date, location, that type of thing, just so that we've got it, so that I've got it documented. So really, this is just one way, and you can do this either for yourself or on a flip chart in front of other folks. And it's just one way to be able to talk about and to capture what was being said. So I'm going to dive right in to a couple of pieces here that I've done so that you can see what that looks like in action. And this particular, I'm going to see if I can find this on the Appreciative Inquiry website. This is from their website. It's on their blog page, and I call it Start Your Meetings with a Celebration. And when we start our meetings with a celebration, we really are able to set the tone for the meeting. So in this case, how I did this, and this is a iceberg, and we all know that icebergs really don't have more showing above the water than below, but they had a lot of accomplishments. So prior to, and I realize, I think I'm recording, yes. Okay. So prior to the meeting, I asked the the director of this arts organization, what are some of the successes that you've had over the last year that's going to help us really set the tone for what we've done? Now, this was the first time anyone in the organization had gotten together since the pandemic, and they had really accomplished a lot, and that was exciting. And so I wrote inside of that iceberg at the top, the blue part, I wrote inside of there what they had accomplished. And there are 5 different sections, and it may not be obvious now, but later on in the meeting, it was very obvious. And so it was in 5 different sections, and the director used that to set the tone. So she was talking, and just that first top part was filled out. And then I said, okay, what else did we succeed at? And so around the outside is where I captured. So that first part was done before even the meeting started. And then during the meeting, I said, what else have we done? Or what are some of our other successes? And so the people in the room started to say things, and I put that around the outside. And then I asked, what do you think helps you be successful? So there's that AI question. What lent itself or what contributed to your success? And at the bottom, that's where I filled it in. They were saying communication, collaboration, commitment, passion, all of those things. And so we used that later on in the session at the very end when they had their action plans for what they were going to do in the next year. I said, how are we going to get there? And they were like, we don't know. So I pulled this visual back out and I said, I want to remind you how successful you've been during the pandemic. And now that we have more access to each other and you have a little bit more freedom because they were open more, we can have much more success. And let's look at what's underneath that waterline as a contributor to that success. So just this one graphic was sort of the bookends of a meeting. Let's set it out with a great tone and let's reinforce the strengths that you have and what helped you be successful so far to go further in the business. So what questions or comments do you have about that?
I love this. And I don't know if the question that I have is pertinent to this or not, it might be, but I am like, I'm usually the facilitator and the scriber.
Yeah.
So I am like, as like, I'm not like, this is like visual recording is very new to me. It's like, how do you move into like being able to start bringing some of those visual things when like you're facilitating and you don't have somebody else doing that for you?
Well, you'll notice that at the top where it says our accomplishments at the DAC, that's very beautifully written, right? That was all done beforehand. Everything in the inside top was done beforehand. So really, if you look at it, I only wrote what was around the outside, and you'll notice I didn't write much. Film Fest. Like that wasn't much. So someone was talking and they talked about the Film Fest for 5 minutes. I just wrote down Film Fest. So I'm not really writing down a ton here. And then at the bottom, because I wanted to make it easy on myself as well, I was just writing attributes. We have commitment, positivity, shift in the organization. Okay, that took a little bit longer to write. But really, they're talking this whole time. This exercise probably took a half an hour. So if you think about, I'm really not writing that much as they're talking.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're doing, so this is, so just to say it aloud so that so I can remember it. Basically, like you're doing like if I was using like flip chart and bullets, like you're just like, instead of having bullets, you're like kind of putting the words around, but it's basically you're capturing basically.
Exactly. And I put the link in the chat where I literally give you the step-by-step of how I did it. So it gives you, and it tells you what materials you need, everything. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love this one and I use it a lot. And then the next one that I have to share is called Engage Your Meeting Participants, Visualize Your Agenda. And I'm going to put this one in the chat as well. And again, I talk a little bit about the step-by-step here. If you notice on the right, where it says Residential Business Segment Portfolio Summit. Boy, that sounds like an exciting event, doesn't it? So, so they wanted to know, they'd never worked with a visual practitioner before, and they said, what is this going to look like? And I said, well, do you have an agenda? And they said, sure. So they sent me their agenda. And I said, if I were to visualize it, you're going to have a conversation at the beginning. Of course, I'm going to write down the agenda. You're going to set the roles, responsibilities, those kind of things, outcomes. And they had a first activity around finding your why. And so I just drew a bullseye and said, we're going to talk about what those mean, and we're going to have a conversation about it. So that's what all those little speech bubbles represented. Then they said, well, we also need to do some work where we're going to look at some financials, and we want to look at the whole big picture and what kind of things that are influencing our business. So that next graphic was actually taken from the Grove, because I'm trained by the Grove. The Grove Consultants is a visual facilitation company that's training. So that's could be an additional type of training you could get if you're interested. And then there was a SWOT analysis. That's pretty common, right? If any of you have ever done one of those, it's literally those 4 boxes and you facilitate and do bullets in each of those boxes. Then we wanted to say, okay, now that we've made these decisions, what are we going to try to foster and grow, and what are we going to leave behind? And then this whole thing was put on by a marketing group, and so they wanted to talk about their different brands and how they were going to introduce that. And then the last final thing was next steps. So they took this visual, never having worked with a visual practitioner, and went, this is fantastic, you're hired. Great. I show up, they didn't follow their own agenda, but I still had to fill up, and I did. I filled up 2 20-foot long walls. So the very top part, that was 20 feet. The next one was another 20 feet. And I just wrote all day long. And then the final one was on an easel that showed their next steps. And we had flip charts all around the room that were these other little subset conversations and breakouts. So it did not look this beautiful and neat when I gave it back to them, because they had a very messy conversation. So so this was a 3-day event. And on the end of day 2, they looked around the room and they were like, you captured everything. And I said, I did. And they said, now, how do we present this back to the CEO in the C-suite? Because they're coming in tomorrow and they want to know what we've done so far. And I said, well, none of us are going to stay up until midnight putting together a report. I said, use the visuals that are in the room to create a gallery walk. And they said, what does that look like? And I said, pretend you're the C-suite. So I pushed them all out of the room. And then I opened the doors. I welcomed them in. I said, you can sit in a chair or you can follow me. Consider me your tour guide. And I walked them all the way around the room. And as I was walking them around the room, I was calling on the individuals in the room. Can you say more about this? I know this was a really important conversation. Can you say more? So I became sort of the MC of the tour, and then kind of handed it over to them. And at the very end, they were like, yay, will you do this tomorrow? And I went, no, you're going to do it tomorrow. And they said, well, will you start us off? And I did. We got about halfway through the room and I started talking and bringing the participants in. And pretty soon they took over. And at the very end of the meeting, even though this is not what they thought it was going to be, the CEO said, he gave the marketing person a promotion in front of everybody, and they gave them a budget to do everything they said they wanted to do because they saw it. And they said, can we use these visuals to report out to the rest of the organization? So I created a PowerPoint, just photographs of each one of those conversations, and gave just a little bit of narrative, and they used that to share out with the rest of the organization. And really, it only started with this. Now, I'm a graphic recorder. I don't expect you to go into a room and do all of that. But if you are facilitating, you could take just one slice of an agenda like this and make it visual. And if it's just one piece, this was 3 days, so that was a lot. But if you just had one visual that represented a conversation, that's going to make it stronger just by having that. Yeah. So what questions do you have about this particular approach? It was a big event, so yours may not be this big.
No, I love it. I think that what I'm hearing is like start with I'm looking at this, and even if I'm like looking at the agenda, and I'm like, what if I just have that frame? Right.
Yeah.
Just with that, right? Like
Yeah.
that would make it would be different already.
Right.
So
Right.
like start like experimenting with little like I don't want to call them decorations, but like kind of like oh like what if we add some pizzazz? Like
Exactly. Exactly.
and start like that. Yeah.
It's just a little bit more engaging, right? It gives them a
Hmm.
focal point to give their attention to. So I have a couple of other case studies. This one's a pretty long one, and I'll give you the context here. So I was working for an organization in Washington, D.C., and it was an organization that wanted to create sort of a grassroots movement to change the culture of the organization. Rather than it being from top down, they wanted it to be from bottom up. And so this group of actually they were misfits and I loved them. They said, let's get together and let's change our culture. Let's build what our culture, what we want it to be. And I said, I'm in. I'm here to serve you. And so this was before I really took any lettering classes, but this was my agenda. So again, you see that, agenda is really big and I'm just taking the colors and making a different color for every line so it's easier to read. You can see each item. I have an objective flip chart. So these are just flip charts, objective, purpose, and then the desired outcomes. And, I've made these beforehand. So this is all beforehand. And then once I got into the room, the only thing that was done beforehand was the top part and the very bottom part with these leaves is sustainability garden. So in appreciative inquiry, we don't have a parking lot because we believe that's where good ideas go to die. We have a sustainability garden where great seed ideas can grow. So you can steal this, and I've even got some visuals, some nicer visuals that you can copy that show sustainability garden. And everything that was written in underneath sustainability garden, that was a parking lot thing. That could just be done. People can write them on post-it notes and put them up there, so you don't have to. But you can also write if something's a parking lot item, you can put it there. How many of you use parking lots or something similar to that in your meeting? Yeah, because it's like somebody's got a great idea or somebody's saying something that's off topic. We've got to put it somewhere. So a sustainability garden gives hope that it's going to be revisited. So do that at the end of the meeting. Make sure you go back and go to the sustainability garden and maybe even say, who's going to take this on? Okay, this was a really great idea. We need to give it some energy. We need to give it some resources or attention. Oops. So who's going to take that on? So again, put it back onto the group, but give them a place to put that. So it's also a collaboration. And I wanted to make sure that my client had a piece of this. And I said, what's something else we can give the group that's tangible? So my client created this handout. And all it is a thought bubble in a box because it was we called it a placemat. And so they were invited to capture their own ideas and action items, anything that was coming up for them, triggers and feedback during the meeting. And they could share this. We had an opportunity at the end to share these out. And then on the flip side was, again, what else is coming up? What do I need to know to feel good about being a part of this group? I think the first part was really for them. And then the second part, I think they handed back to us. And so this was just another piece that they could write on as we're all talking. Um, we're in online now, so we can be working with third-party collaboration tools or writing in the chat, or, we could all be communicating in different ways, maybe working on teams. But in person, you kind of have to give them something tangible, to work with. So the way that I started out the meeting is I said, okay, let's talk about the attributes of a positive culture. So in this flip chart, all I wrote before the session was the words attributes of a positive culture. And I drew these people that were in the middle. That's all I did. And when they started saying, okay, it's really based on respect, that we default to yes, meaning yes and. So they were having all these conversations, and I was picking out the key, what I call key knowledge nuggets, the key pieces. So when they say something like sense of ownership, there are no roads, I want to make sure that ownership is the key word that stands out. So notice I made it bigger and bolder. That's all. And then when we got to the part where someone said feeling comfortable is important, And then someone said, no, comfort's not good. We need people to, we need to push people a little bit. And then someone said, well, we have to feel safe too. We have to feel safe to be able to share and take risks and be confident. And so there was this whole conversation around that. And so that's why I wrote red in red so that people would remember, oh, there was more to that conversation than just one person writing it down and then we all say, that's it. So this was a really important piece. And it not only did it set the tone for the meeting, everyone thinking positively about what a positive culture looks like, but we actually use these attributes to be a part of a matrix. So what's a matrix? It's just X axis and Y axis, and it's like a grid. And so here's this blank matrix. That's all I had when I started in the meeting. And then kapow, all those things that I said that they said the attributes, those are along the top. I said, okay, let's pick the top 6 or 7. And so the top 6 are up there. And then we had a wild card if there was something else. And then I said, who are the people in this organization? If we were to design for the margins, who are the underserved or who are the people that are in this organization? And so they talked about women of color, women in certain areas of the organization. These were all just different people that they identified. And I said, okay, what do they need in order to be successful in this organization, to contribute to the culture, in order to build respect, in order to have diversity? What do they need? What are some of the things that this group can do? And so I gave them about 10 minutes and they filled out as many Post-it notes as they could. So we harvested all at once. And you were asking, what do you do with all the Post-it notes? This is the matrix. This is the context. This is what we put it in. So we set it up beforehand and then it's already there. So if somebody wanted to make a spreadsheet, this is easy. We've got it. But it was so tangible that people are standing up, getting up, moving, and interacting with the chart. So no drawing here except for the lines. And notice those little people, those are Post-it notes that are shaped like people. So again, the visual was already built in to the supply. So we took this creative matrix and let's see, I have some, and I'll share these slides with you. It'll be part of the follow-up. But it looks like I just said that they came up with 47 unique ideas in 10 minutes. That's awesome. And then, so everybody got that sticky note, 1 idea per sticky. That's the rule. And so there we go. And then we took this one strip. We said, okay, where do we have the most energy around? Where are we going to have the most success? Okay, we're not sure. Well, let's just pick one. And then we did a priority matrix. Maybe you've seen this where there's effort on the x-axis and impact on the y-axis. And so when we think about all those little sticky notes we just said, which of the things, first you start with the highest effort with the lowest impact, that lower right-hand corner. And you start putting things in these boxes. And if you have things that end up being a lot of effort and not very much impact, don't do them. You don't need to do them. That's fine. It doesn't feel good to put something off our plate. But then what is high impact and low effort? These are the things we really want to focus on. This is where we're going to get the biggest wins. And then there's going to be some things that are low effort, low impact. And they're the things that are just going to, you got to get them done. These are the tasks. So yeah, they're small, they're fun, they'll keep people engaged, but they're not going to have a big impact. In that high impact, high effort, it might not be something you do at this time, but it takes a while to get done. So you want to plant some seeds today to keep the momentum. Those high effort, high impacts, those are things that are going to make long lasting impressions. So those top boxes in the priority matrix are really where you want to put your energy and focus. And so this helped them take all of those ideas and prioritize them. Now we talked yesterday about the funnel. And so, sorry, got to do the hidden gems. You got to say, okay, some ideas hit the cutting room floor. Which are the ones we still want to pick up? So we did an energy gram where we voted and said, okay, where are those hidden gems? And then the decision funnel. So here's where at the top we put the criteria. At the end, what do we want to finally have? And through that funnel, it's a sideways funnel, but through that funnel, we decided what ideas are we going to take from the top part of that prioritization matrix? Which ideas are really going to make it through? Because that's going to help us decide what our action plan is next. And you got access to this yesterday. That tells you how to do the actual funnel. There's the instructions. Oops, that's it. So that was it. That's how we ended the session. It was like, okay, we figured it out. We came up with what we're going to do next in a very short amount of time. I think it was like an hour and a half. They were a very savvy group. They knew why they were there, but it was really easy just to pull all of that together in one place. And now we have these slides that they use to go after some funding and resources and people, and that I get to use now as a case study. Yeah. So what questions do you have about those? Or ideas that come up thinking about them?
I'm really impressed by doing all that in 90 minutes.
Keep in mind, it took me about 6 hours to plan.
Still.
So yeah, so it takes time to make all the flip charts. It takes time to design it. It takes time to design the meeting with the client, knowing what they want to get out of it. That takes the most amount of time. And if you do all that planning up front, then the meeting can go very smoothly. This group I've also worked with before. I mean, this wasn't a brand new concept. Some of, you might be using visuals for the very first time. Take it easy. You don't have to have every single step of the way has to be visual. Just one thing is a great place to start. Yeah. Very good. All right. Do either of you have something, either a purpose for an upcoming session or an agenda item that you would like to co-create?
I have an upcoming thing next week, but I did my sketches of my first drafts.
Excellent. Is it something you want to share or improve on?
Yeah, I could get some feedback, but then I have other stuff that feels more complicated and I really need help.
Okay, whatever you want to work on. Let's do some freestyle, and then we'll do a bit of a review of, how do we then, I mean, we can look at the checklist, but we've got a couple of other things I want to make sure that you have. But before you do, let's dive in and let's look at some of the things that we could co-create visually. Give you some ideas. You don't have to take these. It's just an idea. So, yeah. Who would like to share first?
My big one, I had like 3 scenarios I was working on today. My big one is I hope to do a pilot with a new unit or a new work group in the autumn, and like to share the stuff we have been doing and do work visually with them. So we in the homework, so I was thinking about how, like the first meeting, what would it look like?
Well, what are you hoping to accomplish when you say you're going to pilot something with a new work group? What are you piloting? Or what are you wanting to accomplish with the new work group?
Yeah, so where I work now, I've been working 2 years. So we do social work, and I really have wanted to bring visuals into social work for a very long time. So based on graphic facilitation, we have developed like different tools, and we will continue this year. So very much trying things out. Like doing lots of prototypes and changing and ditching some ideas and using, and it's been very helpful. But so we like what I want to do is like to try to bring this to another unit to see, like nobody can have one person. Like I have been working with this, nobody can afford having one person doing this stuff like I'm
Right.
doing. So we need to find a way to make a system out of it and to be able to scale up and like test, like how much can they take like directly from us, and then to develop based on what we have done, what kind of tools would be useful for them.
Okay. So when you say systemize, scale, and test, what are you systemizing, scaling, and testing?
Working with using visuals in social work.
Right, but specifically about social work, because that's a really big bucket. So what's
Okay,
the
so
purpose? Yes.
yes, the first place is they are also job coaches. I want to do this is not something that's been decided upon, but this is like it's another unit working also as job coaches, but with the other kinds of groups, and they are in the same house as us. So I think it
Okay.
would be sort of logistically easy to do or
Right.
easier to do in the same house. And if we can develop good tools, visual tools with them, then there are several other units that work in the same way. So maybe we could just bring the tools to them and teach them
Got
to
it.
use. Yeah.
Great. Okay. So what I'm hearing you say is that you want to systemize, scale, and test visual tools to use in their social work as
Yeah.
job coaches. So with
Yes.
that, what are they currently using that's working? That's an appreciative inquiry thing. What's the current thing they're doing that's consistent and working that they kind of all have in common? Like this is our language. This is what we're doing. Do you know what that is? Or do they know what that is?
Um, I would have to ask them, and if I'm guessing, they start working with a method called supported employment a couple of years ago, but I don't know how happy they are about the method. We work with individual placement and support, which is very successful. So
Right.
would have to investigate if their
Great.
method is working for
This
them.
is a great opportunity to have a core group of people that are job coaches to help you find out what tools are currently working, what tools will help them be better or do better at their job, improve the process, right? And that you've got to keep that pretty simple for them, but effective, right? So you've got to be thinking about that. Is there anything right now that you can think of that you're like, oh, we could visualize this, but I don't know what it looks like? But you're thinking, here's one thing that would help them. Is there anything that stands out?
Are you thinking about a tool that would help them, or in the discussion with them?
Anything. Whatever, I'm going to let you
Okay.
choose your adventure. Yeah. I just want to help
Yeah.
visualize it. Yeah.
I'm guessing. I'm guessing we have a kit. We have a visual material with cards where we like it's sort of a visual process mapping where we can show the whole process they go through at and it's been very helpful for us. So I'm guessing something similar so people know what's going to happen and why, and there's so much happening, so it's really hard to keep in the head.
Right. So you're using visual cards currently to show the process.
Yes.
What are they doing before or after that?
They or
helping.
we.
Well, so here's what I'm trying to get at is
Okay.
if these are job coaches and they already have, we don't have to recreate something that's already working. Let's not do that. Okay. I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but Ford, when he decided he was going to come up with a new automobile, he asked people what they wanted. They didn't know what an automobile was. So they said, we just want faster horses. So what we want to get away from is recreating something that already exists and give them something that's going to help them. If they already have visual cards that help them with their process,
No, no,
great.
no. We
What
have. They don't have.
they don't have. Okay. So that's
Yeah.
something that you could share with them. Another
Yeah.
part in the bigger process, what you might do is either ask the core group, or if you yourself already know, and this could be for a job coach or anyone, in terms of their role in supporting in their role as social workers, what are the actual, and you and I talked about this offline yesterday, the customer journey or the journey of the client. What word do you use to describe the people that you're supporting?
Oh, I can't. I don't even know what it would be in English.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So is it's like a patient, a client?
No, like a client is like a relative. I could look on the in, but I don't think it. I can look
Spell
it
it for
up.
me. Spell it for me.
DEL
Uh-huh.
TATA
CATA. Okay.
GARE.
Okay. That's fine. It's their journey,
Yeah.
right? So you talk about what this person goes through in the journey. There's going to be highs and lows, right, in the process.
Yeah.
And then you have the job coach, and what do they need in order to help them? And if you already, if at some point in the process they're doing the cards, okay, great. But before they actually work together, what is this person experiencing? What are they coming in? How are they coming in? And how can this person welcome them? Because they're probably coming in at a low place. They need help. So,
Yeah.
what's the first thing? And you can call it a welcome, it can be onboarding, whatever those very first steps are that connect these two people together. Make a strong connection, right? We want them to feel like they're human beings going through a process where at the end they're going to feel helped, right? So maybe there's some welcome, there's some onboarding. There could be, you could create a visual that's sort of, I'm just going to put, here I am now, or who am I today? Really, you're just asking, you're just connecting with them on that level. And then they go through a process and they're like, you know what? Things are going pretty well. I have the tools. My job coach is giving me what I need. You know, all these check boxes along the way are getting checked. And then something happens. And the job coach or someone gets called back in, social worker gets called back in and says, where are you today? Again, where are you today? Or what do we need in order to help you now to get to that next up part where they feel like, okay, I'm getting somewhere, right? And then what does the ending look like? So when this person goes through this journey, how does it end? Does it ever end? Yeah. So here is where you draw that picture of success. And not that you have to draw it, maybe they draw it. And maybe it starts here. Maybe it starts in the very first meeting where it's the vision. They draw a picture of success. And the job coach says, okay, there's your picture. Here's how we're going to work together. These are going to be the steps that we're going to take in order to be successful. And that could already be predetermined, or it can be a template where the job coach is writing it out based on their picture of success so that they see, oh, wow, they're coming up with a plan for me. Right? And what does that plan look like? I mean, it can look a lot of different ways. My go-to for something that's going to be a journey is here's a horizon line. So far, pretty easy. Depending on where you live, if you live in the mountains, great. You can draw some mountains, but it just shows that something's in the distance. You might have a sunrise or a sunset, and that's the vision. So you could literally write in that area. Maybe this area here is the goal. And then you have a road, and maybe there's milestones, right? So maybe there's a little sign here. 1, there's a sign here. 2, and then maybe there's a final sign, the very end here. 3. And here's where you are today. And guess what? We're together. And we're pointing at the future today. And our first steps today are to do this. And then maybe later down the road, we're going to do this. And then finally, we're going to do this so that you can meet your vision and your goal. How does that feel?
Yeah, that's interesting. We could try that.
And that might be something that you test with the core group and see if they like it. And maybe they want to draw it. Yeah.
I can test that where I'm now.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What I'm more concerned about now is the process with the new group.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever group. I mean, now I have this idea of what group I want to work with, and we don't know, maybe I can't decide, but I sort of want to build a skeleton for the process with the group.
Mm-hmm.
Because the problem I have now is that everybody's like super interested in this project that I'm doing, and they think like, oh well, bring Heidi here for 1 hour and she will talk to our group, and then they will start drawing, and it's like, well, no. So I want to build like, so I have a structure for the first discussion with the group, like the work group, and how we'll, like, I think there has to be like a first meeting that's sort of like a planning, and then we will like, so we will build up how we will work together and maybe have follow-ups like every 6th week or something, and they will try, and I probably need a super user. So yeah.
So it sounds to me like you need to get really, really clear on that first meeting purpose so they understand why they're there if they don't already. You're just really clear at the beginning. That's the what, you know, the purpose. And then thinking about your process, it sounds like you kind of have the first meeting all lined out. But if you want, what? I don't know. You said you kind of have it lined out, but if not, we can go through that. And then what's the payoff? Like, what's going to keep them engaged? And if you say, you know, if you mapped out, just like I mapped out that agenda, if you mapped out a process and said, here's what we're going to do over the next 6 months or a year, they're going to say, oh, let's see where you fit in it. You want to make sure they see themselves in it, that vision. Anytime you start a new process, always start, I mean, I always start with a vision because what it does is it gives everybody a visual or a word or a statement that they can feel themselves being a part of. And then at any time, because it always happens, people get lost in the process. Wait, where are we? Wait, this isn't working. Wait. Let's go back to our vision. This was the vision we said we were going to do. And that's why this particular visual here, you could even use it for the whole group if you wanted something similar, whatever, I don't care. This could help with an individual person, but it can be with a team when you come up with a vision and say, what are the major steps we're going to do to get there? Now that scratches the itch of people feeling like, yay, we did something. We have something finished in the meeting. And then you go, okay, now each one of these steps has like 100 little steps, tasks underneath it. So is a group going to come together to work on that together? Or are you going to have other meetings and say, okay, we're going to come back and we're going to make sure that this is finished by a certain date?
I'm guessing. I'm guessing it would be really good if there were like 1 or 2 or 3 super users that I would work with. But if there is nobody who volunteers, then I would work with the whole group and find a way. So what I'm thinking, like I have some idea for the structure for the year, but for the first meeting, I'm a bit, because what I'm thinking now and what I really would love some feedback on is like I would do some kind of presentation of graphic facilitation or visual thinking and about what we have done, and then I would like ask them if they could see where it could benefit them, or
So it sounds like it needs to come a little bit from the group as well. Here's the thing.
yeah,
Because when you say do a visualization or something like that, if you think it comes from you, then they'll just be like, oh, that's your project. What's going to get them engaged? What's going to get them excited about that? And maybe you draw a partial picture and say, what's missing? And they get to be a part of it.
I was thinking about doing, if I ask them what is working well and what is hard for them, and maybe like we could look together where visuals might help them.
So what I tell them, I don't
Yeah.
ask them what visuals are going to help you because they don't know. I say, what tools do you need to support you? And they will say things like, oh, I need a checklist or a form, or they'll start to say a functional thing, and then you can make it more visual. But see, we're talking very big conceptual, and then you're also diving down into the little things that you need. I would need to know, like, what questions are you going to ask them in that meeting? Let's convert it to AI, and then let's figure out a visual that's going to support that well.
Like I would ask them to tell what their process looks like.
Yes.
And what are the things that are like easy and working and their successes, and what are the like what are the difficult parts?
Right. And this is where a journey like this would be great, because all you have to do is put a line on the wall. It could be a piece of tape on a wall. It could be a whiteboard. It could just be a line, right? And then they have sticky notes, and you say, okay, this is this person's name, and you write their name down, and you say, tell me your steps. And maybe you write them quickly on a Post-it note and put them up there. And what's great about those Post-it notes is that someone else comes along and says, okay, my process is pretty similar. So we can pull that Post-it note down, but here's where it's different. And you could have maybe 2 or 3 of these so that people can see it's okay that we work differently, and here's why. And that could be because the needs of their clients are different. It could be because their styles are different. Once you know what that journey looks like, then you can say, okay, we've got tools for this up here. That's great. This is already working. We don't need to give it attention. But when we have some low points or some challenges, where can we support you to help you get the tools that you need? And they may not know what that solution is yet. They just know something's not working. And usually the reason why something isn't working is because something's not being communicated or understood. So there we have an opportunity to say, okay, what's the right tool for that? Or something that's happening before or after something that's not working has a dependency on someone else. Well, because, so when this committee's involved, or that's not working, right? And so then you have to look at process improvement on either side to see if you can fix whatever this is. But usually it's just what tool is needed there to help bring that process along. Is any of this helpful, Heidi? Because I know we're kind of talking vague and specific at the same time.
Yes.
Okay. And this could also be something that maybe you marinate, you think about it for a little bit, and then come back during Friday or at another time when we can have an office hour and take it to another level of refinement. How's that sound?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So is there anything from this specifically that you're like, that was a piece that you're like going to hang on to and build on?
I think when I would like for us to connect like the vision and the dream of the clients to where we are now. We're not so good at doing that, and some of the job coaches don't even want to talk. Like that's one of our conflicts, that some of the coaches don't want to talk about people's dreams. They just want to talk about work. And yeah. So I think connecting the vision to like where we are now and the first steps. Yeah.
Okay.
I will absolutely marinate on that one. Yeah.
Good. All right. Well, we're close to the top of the hour, so let's take a break till the top of the hour and come back. And if you're ready, Shauna, then we can do one of yours. How's that sound? I got to thinking about what Heidi said, and I wanted to share a story, and then I found a tool that might be helpful too, another visual that might be helpful. And what happened to me one time is I was in a meeting with this facilitator who wrote a book that she titled The Encyclopedia of Facilitation. And I thought, she's a pro. All I have to do is show up and draw. And I was the type of person that would always prepare until I felt comfortable. And then I would go in and I'd be fully prepared. And then I'd play jazz, like whatever comes my way, I'm ready no matter what. Even if it doesn't go as planned, I would be as flexible as I could. Well, I show up to this meeting thinking, she's a pro. We didn't really plan. She just said, show up with your markers and do your thing. That's all she said. And I thought, well, she wrote the Encyclopedia of Facilitation. I'm good. I show up and she tells everybody in the room, Heather is excellent at drawing what we say and facilitating. So I'm just going to sit back and she's going to run the meeting. I was like, what? I don't even know the purpose of the meeting. Like, I didn't know anything. She didn't prepare me at all. And we kind of struggled back and forth. And, I'm trying to negotiate roles as we're doing this. And I just kind of lead the group through. And finally, she was like, I'll do the talking. Okay, good. Whew. So she started facilitating and I kept writing. And at the end of the session, I had written down everything they said, but she was not pleased. She was like, I can't believe this. I've seen finished pieces come out of you in all of these different meetings, but today, why didn't you, what went wrong? And I said, we didn't prep. I had no idea what my role was. You just said, show up with my markers and do my thing. I thought I was just graphic recording. And she's like, well, what are we going to do now? And I said, well, bring the meeting person, like the person that we had the meeting for, bring them back in. I said, and of all of the things around this room, because it was a full day event, I said, of all these things, what do you think is the most important that we need to share out with the group? And so I just went around with a marker and highlighted the most important things. And then I created a graphic from that and gave it back to them. So at the end of the meeting, they were all kind of upset because it didn't go very well. And the next day, when I came back with the visual and I gave it to them, they were so excited that weeks later, they had the visual pinned up in their workspaces because it was something that helped them remember what happened in the meeting. So I share this with you because the level at which you prep is going to be really important, that you really prepare, that you can't just show up and be like, I'm going to draw. Because sometimes it doesn't really work out that way. If you know that you're job is to do that, that's one thing. But honestly, it's about really making sure that all the right tools are in place to have that conversation. So knowing that purpose is really key. And if you get in a bind and you're not quite sure how to fix it, at the very end, you just decide, what can I do to help give them the most value after the meeting? And I kind of had to save myself in that instance. And so I'm not blaming the person. It was just a big miscommunication on who was going to do what and what the roles were. So that's pretty important. But I wanted to share that with you because you might feel like, well, how much do you prepare? And I always say that if my anxiety is up here about something, I prepare until it's about even, or at least a little bit balanced. So I wanted to show you, I was thinking about what Haiti was saying in terms of working with people. And yeah, maybe some of the job coaches don't want to talk about dreams, but here's something that I did in conjunction with Lizard Brain Solutions. This was my client. His name's Brian Tarallo, and you can check out this website. He's also a visual practitioner, and we were co-facilitating this. And it was a teenage girls soccer club. It was a teenage girls soccer club, but I made it so universal it could be used in anywhere. And we were asking these girls, what's important to you? What gives you joy? What have you accomplished? What's your experience so far? And it might just be that, one was the captain of the team, or I've been playing soccer for 4 years, but what are the experiences? What have you contributed to the team? And what kind of meaningful relationships have you had? And I would guess, I'm not a social worker, but I would guess that all of these topics would be good topics to get to know someone. And if you were to ask them about their inner qualities, you can ask them about their attributes. That's one thing. But then you can say, okay, say you were to write a book, or someone were to write a book about you. You could draw your picture here. What would you want someone to say about you? What's something that someone would say about you? So there's a quote, and then here's some just extra space if they wanted to draw or doodle or whatever. But this could be a collaborative piece that potentially a job coach and I can't say it, a Delta Gare. I tried my best. My English mouth can't say it. Go ahead and say it. I should have asked you to say it when you spelled it.
Deltagare.
Oh, I was way off. Diatagare. Okay. So
That's pretty good.
I tried. So I don't think I could do it again. But the idea is that this is a shared visual focal point, and you can change the words in here to whatever you want. But the idea is that you make space for the conversation. So then what we did is all of the students did this on their own. And then on a big wall, we had this type of journey map. And we said, what are our shared values as a team? What kind of ideas do we have to keep our team spirit, to keep to keep that mental energy up? What kind of choices are we going to make today to make sure that we're going to get to our championship game? And some girls were saying, we're going to eat well, or we're going to exercise. We're going to really give it our all in practice. And what kind of support do we need? Now, some of the kids were like, well, we've got our coach, we have our parents. Maybe it's that we need more people in the stands. How are we going to get people excited about our upcoming game, right? And what are some of our resources? And they didn't really know about that. We threw that in for the coaches, but we had to ask the coaches, what are some of your resources to help you get where you want to go? So again, these are just lines on a page. You can take a screenshot of this, or if you watch the video, you can copy this however you want. It's, I don't own the trademark on lines. So you can certainly use that type of thing for another visual, another platform. And it doesn't have to be a bridge, but it can. Values doesn't have to be there. This can be vision, whatever it is that you're trying to lead up to. And because we tend to read from left to right, we do top to bottom, but here is sort of like a starting point. And anytime you add a diagonal, it leads the eye. And so visually, we're just looking at, here we are today. And here's where we want to eventually be, or what we're shooting for and living by. Okay. So does that bring up any ideas, or do you have any questions about that? Okay. Shohana, do you want to collaborate on creating a visual for something that you're working on or something that's coming up?
Yeah, I have like many things in mind, so
Let's pick one so we're successful. Yeah.
I know, right? So let me talk this out loud. I think I was like, so I did my coaching onboarding, so I think I'm good with that. So I'm between like discovery sessions and check-in points, but I think like coaching discovery sessions is something that I like be struggling, but not struggling, but like I think I can grow in a little bit more.
Okay. So do you have a purpose statement or something that you can really give me that if I didn't know what you were talking about, help me focus in on where we want to put our attention now?
So this is where we it's usually a life coaching potential partner and I are exploring a potential partnership.
Okay, great. Super. And what do you usually help people with? What are your clients usually working on?
Let's focus on life coaching. So folks are usually in a place where they know that there's something that wants to change.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Something that wants to come about, and they are like, I would love support with that.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to share a couple of these are just a couple of icons that I do. I use the delta or the triangle for change. I use this for transformation. And this icon, even though it's an arrow with a little shift in it, is actually comes from the Shift It program. Have you heard of, I think we talked about this, of Christina Merkley?
You shared yesterday.
Yeah. So Shift It is a visual program. If you were interested in doing visuals and using her maps, it's based on the law of attraction. So it may or may not be interest of you. But so when I do my life coaching, I use her maps to do that. And I'm certified to do that. She doesn't allow you to do that otherwise. But I'll tell you, it's a series of visual maps that can take people through the process. But the very first map is very similar to what I suggested to Haiti, and that is, where are you now? And in her map, she draws a person standing in the crossroads. So if you were like, well, let's talk about, let's do a wave like this. I'm just making this up right now. And you say, okay, I am here now. This is where I am now. And I want to go through a shift. And this down doesn't need to be like a depressing part. It's about going deep. Right. And so this is about finding your own source and then deciding, where do you want to end up? And you might just very easily, I don't know what your brand is, or if you have any visuals that talk about your, or even text that talks about your life coaching, but some of these visuals can start to be a part of your process, right? To help them through that. And if you have check-in points, that's fantastic, because now we can create visual tools that help with that. So tell me a little bit about your process as a life coach and what you take people through. Like, do you have an approach for that?
Yeah, so I drew.
Oh, good. Yay.
So my coaching is based on psychosynthesis, which is a branch of transpersonal psychology. And the idea is that we focus on a purpose for our coaching together.
Great.
And that purpose could be a life purpose, or it could be a purpose that is calling people right now. And then we explore multiple possibilities to live this purpose. And then we choose something to test, and that is usually an action item for the person to explore.
Mm-hmm.
And then we figure how that we explore how that worked for them, if that is helping them to be more aligned with their purpose, if something needs to change. And then throughout that process, we explore how the person can be aligned with their values, right? So that when the coaching is done, they're not necessarily dependent on the coach, although like it's always helpful to have somebody else. But like the whole idea is like, how do you get to know your values, your preferences, how you make decisions, how you know what you know.
Yeah.
And so you can continue living from that place.
Yeah. Love that. So where in this process would you like support to have a visual? Is there an empty spot where you're like, this would be a great place to do that? You had mentioned discovery session. Is it in the beginning or is it somewhere else?
So I think like what I'm trying to kind of figure is like how to structure this discovery sessions a little more.
Okay. Good.
Because I feel like I do a lot of talking, and like I am like, yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, do you ask a lot of questions?
I do, but I think I want to ask more questions.
What kind of questions are you asking now? Just a basic one. You don't have to say them all, just a basic one.
I mean, I'm asking like things like what is calling them, what's the thing that is calling them to pay attention to. I'm asking like I'm asking where they're at in a way.
Yep. Okay. And then where they are in that time and place. So in a
where
way,
they like to move toward to.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I hear you say that, it's like a bit of an assessment, isn't it? Do you use any tools like they make like life cycle assessments that say work and like you get to rate, like where are you in work and where are you in play and relationships and love? And is that of interest to you at all?
I don't use that. I mean, after we figure that we are going to be coaching together, then I actually used a modified appreciative inquiry interview guide.
Oh, great. Awesome.
And then I'm like, okay, like based on all of this, like, what are the themes and like, what is calling you for us to coach her right now?
Yeah. Okay. So what I'm just hearing, because I remember you saying before that you do a lot of talking and you want to give it some structure. What I love about the 5D process is that when I'm in a discovery meeting with a client and I'm going through this, I get them to about an 80% solution. So when they leave, they've already experienced my process and they're like, I'm in. Like I didn't have to sell them anything. So if you're doing a lot of talking about your process and people don't see themselves in it and they don't really know if you're going to give them results, they're like, do I want to invest? So it's almost like you need a visual structure to help them experience you.
Yes, that would be great.
Great. Super. And so that's really about the questions, right? And if you're doing the appreciative inquiry questions after they've already become a client, can you bring some of those into the very first session? Would that be helpful?
To the discovery, you mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I could.
Yeah. And the reason why I asked that, and maybe some of the lighter ones, like baseball questions, not the heavy ones, right? But the ones that are a little bit more general. And then because the questions you ask are going to make them feel a certain way. And the way they feel is going to probably be the decision whether they want to work with you or not. So it's so when you're talking, they're like, oh my gosh, this is a lot of information. I want to feel something. So those AI questions, I'm so glad you already have them. There might be one or two that you can pull into and ask them, like we said, where are they now? Where do they want to work towards? And what's calling them to pay attention to? Because how many times have you worked with someone and they thought it was one thing and then it turns into something else, either in the first session or even like down the road? And part of it is because you helped them work through it. And they're on to the next thing, or they're puddle jumping and they don't want to really do the issue.
Yeah, that also happens.
Yeah, that happens too. Exactly. And so this is excellent. So it feels like there could be something that you could fill out. And are you meeting with your clients in person or online?
Online.
Online. And do you currently have any technology that you're using, an iPad or document camera or anything like that?
Nothing.
Okay.
It's just Zoom.
That's fine. And that's totally fine. So, and are you interested in that? And we could talk more about it tomorrow when we do delivery.
Yeah, I mean, I have an iPad, so I could potentially use that. I mean, I think like I had to figure out the camera but I'm super open for that to be something at some point.
And I'm just asking because, well, let me take a step back and say, when you are having a discovery meeting with someone, how are you capturing the information that they're sharing with you?
I'm just typing it or writing it down. Like they're not seeing what I'm doing.
Okay. And if you feel comfortable typing, but giving it back to them, this is what I heard, or a version of that, meaning like, okay, maybe you're not going to share everything, but you're going to share the key pieces that they talked about and maybe some recommendations that you have, or or the benefits, like here's how I can help you.
Okay. Right? Yeah, because I kind of do that at midway and at the end. Not really at the end, like I give him like a map, which now I'm like going to explore how I can make it more visually appealing, because it's like a PowerPoint.
Yeah. And that's fine.
It's a lot of text. So I'm like, I kind of already doing that at the end. And so I'm thinking about, that's what I put the check-in, like what can I do like halfway? Because I do check-in with folks like halfway to be like oh, this, like, how's this going, right? Like, is there anything we need to change, blah, blah, blah. So I already, like, I want to do visuals for that. But like at the very beginning, like people are like, so what do we do together? So I love the idea of like experiencing that. And that's, I've been struggling with like, okay, what do I get them to experience? Because like the process is kind of like, I make it really big for myself. So I'm struggling in like, how do I condense the process for like a one session?
So let me ask you this. When you work with your clients, who are your favorite clients to work with? Like, who do you enjoy attracting? What are they like? Just some attributes of what your ideal client is like.
I think that they're really open to growth. They are excited to go deep and like okay with the discomfort.
Do you think they come that way, or do you think you make them feel that way so they can?
I think they are probably predisposed to that if they're in like a safer place. And I think I'm able to create that for folks.
Okay. The reason why I asked that is because this is something that you cannot tell them. They have to experience that in the discovery meeting. Yeah. You can use words like, I enjoy working with people who are open to growth. And if the person closes their arm and goes, I hate change, they're not your client. I don't think, unless you really, really want a challenge. Or if you're like, I love a good challenge, I want to crack this one, right? But so the reason why I say that is because if you think about the attributes of your ideal client, then you can start mirroring, and you know this as in the work you do, mirroring their words so that you can create that connection. And so my suggestion is you talk about, you check in with them in the middle and at the end, you tell them what it's going to be like. Make that whole experience be something that's felt from the very beginning, because first impressions are big, and then how they leave feeling is a big thing too. And I don't mean to tell you how to be a
Yeah.
coach, but how do we create visuals that do that? Questions are going to be key.
Mhm.
And whether or not they see you writing doesn't matter.
Mhm.
But if you give something back to them in a visual form, and it's something that talks about where they are today, what they
Mhm.
want to give attention to, and what they want to work towards, they're going to feel heard. They're going to say, oh, she heard
Yeah.
me. Those were my words. She typed my words in there. Now, I
Mhm.
had a session with a coach one time that was taking me through a reframing process, and she
Mhm.
was taking me deep, and I can't even remember what I said. So when she gave it back to me, all typed out, here's what it was. Actually, she wrote it, hand wrote it. Here's what you said, and then here were your reframing words. She was helping me
Mhm.
reframe, and I was making those positive,
Mhm.
statements. She shared those back with me, and she happened to draw a picture in the background. I was like, this is
Mhm.
incredible. Like it was, and it's funny because I've had a lot of coaches do a lot of different
Mhm.
things. And when she did that for me, it was like, I'm going to hang this up. I'm
Mhm.
going to look at this every day. And I ended up blacking out all the negative things I said and just highlighted the positive things. Because I was like,
Mhm.
that's the piece that I want to take with me going forward. And that was just
Mhm.
one small piece of the process. So if there's something in your process that's a very tiny, tiny
Mhm.
piece that you can give them a taste of,
Mhm.
that's also visual. Just like if you're like, this would be a whole hour-long session, but you're going to give them a 3-minute
Mhm.
taste of what that's like, then
Yeah.
that they can feel it. And what is there
Mhm.
something that we could visualize that piece around that becomes that
Mhm.
focal point where they're like, wow, I can't wait till we get to that step in the process.
Yeah. I'm pulling up the agenda. So it's 30
Right.
minutes. It's
Uh-huh.
because it's a discovery session, right?
Right.
Um, so I'm like, what can I do? Thank you for giving me a moment to find this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it takes time to think.
Um, okay. So this is like my current agenda, but
Mhm.
and it never works out like this. This is what I struggle because
Sure.
like you never know how it's gonna go. So
Right.
the current agenda is to learn more about the coachee's needs,
Mhm.
and do the mini coaching session that I still haven't figured out what it is. That's I think what I'm struggling.
Mhm.
Um, but I've been thinking about things like what aspects of your life give you joy.
Mhm.
um uh I was thinking about questions related to like when you feel most alive or things like that, like kind of like thinking about the appreciative inquiry framing.
Mhm.
um like I'm looking at some of the stuff that you shared yesterday that I was like, oh, like what can I incorporate from that? But it was kind of things like that, like
Mhm.
and then I would be like, what are your wishes or hopes for coaching? Like something along like what do you want our what do you want from our coaching partnership? Something like that.
Mhm.
And I haven't really asked this because I find that people don't really know.
Right.
Sometimes it's like, how will you know there's been movement towards that thing that is calling you?
Yeah.
So I'm like, I stay away from like, how will you know? Because
Yeah. They don't
it's
know.
like they don't know. So it's like we want movement. So
Yeah. They just know they don't want to feel like they do right now.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I try to stay away from that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's kind of a part. Then the other part is kind of like a little bit about what is coaching and how do I coach, which I think like we covered a little bit.
Mhm.
Um, and
So they know what
then
to expect. Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
um, and then there will be the logistics, like how many sessions, price,
So
et
so
cetera,
let
et
me
cetera.
so let me ask you, did you actually follow this when you designed that? Because this is mapped perfectly.
I probably did, like maybe it's like in the back of my head. But like what I'm finding is like I having a hard time implementing it. Like this is how I designed the agenda, but like when we're there, I'm kind of like,
Okay. All right. So we're gonna have a really quick heart to heart.
Uh-huh.
You are talented in what you do, right?
Uh-huh.
You have coaching clients, I guess.
Yeah, I do.
You've had
Yeah.
success in that. So when I first went to Washington, D.C., and I was on this new
Mhm.
job and I had to facilitate the very first week when I thought I was just going to be a graphic recorder, all I had was my very first 4D process. That's all I had written on a piece of paper. I'd never used it before. And I just pulled it out of my pocket and I just started writing and following that. And it worked for me. I was like, I have a place for all the things. And each time I did it, my questions got better, more refined, because it takes time to refine those questions. If you did an interview guide and you customized it, you really got to get the words right, right? So it's the same kind of thing. Now, you may or may not jive with, using this particular icon. It might not be a circle like that. It might be something else. It might look like this. Who knows what the format is. But all you have to do is place your questions along that process so that someone can see. People love it when you're organized and prepared. They're like, oh, I know what to expect. That's what is, and your approach, that's where that's like, oh, I know what to expect. Look, they're coming to you because they want change. Sometimes they're scared. They're definitely vulnerable, and they need to know that you got them, right? But literally, when you talked about needs, wishes, you talked about, your approach. That's the design. This is what it's going to look like, logistics. And then you say, what gives you, even in here, this could be what gives you joy, because I love talking about that. But this piece over here, this delivery or destiny piece, when you say, how will you know that there's movement? Maybe this is the final vision or what you want to pay attention to. Like this is ultimately where we're going to focus. You could simply use something like that, but it didn't have to be that way. You just gave me an agenda. You just said your process. That's wonderful. And again, it could be more like this, or it could be it could just simply be, here are the steps we're going to go through. This to me feels like oh my gosh, we're going to make cookies. We're going to first mix them and then bake them and then eat them. Like this is just like a process, right? But there's something that's comforting about a circle, or you might even, do you have a logo?
I do.
Can I see it?
Yes, it's right behind me. Do you see the lamp that says cosine?
Okay, I'm gonna add you to the spotlight here. Oops.
Okay.
I'm just gonna stop sharing.
Okay, right there.
Okay, cosine. Okay, okay. Guess what? We've already got it. You just gave it to me. It's that.
Oh, yay!
That's your shape. Here we are today. This is where we are. And you're going to experience, this is the change or the shift or whatever language you use to experience why they came here and what's going to happen later on. And whatever you put at the beginning, you don't have to put this thing if it's silly. It could just be words if you want. This is the unknown. This is the part they don't know. But they may know that they just want things to be brighter on the other end. That's it. Right?
Yeah.
And so it could be as simple as that. And then this is your page. And you're going to ask them some questions. And you're going to, here's where you are today. This might be about either where you want to, what you want to pay attention to, or up here somewhere, this is the joy, because it's at the top. And then if they do start talking about challenges, put those at the bottom. Not that they're bad, but they're like, we know it's here, but it's heavy. It's down. So energetically, this is higher. We're moving away from this low place and we're trying to get to our potential. And this is where we're going over time.
Yeah. Whew. This was so grateful.
Is that helpful?
It was so helpful, and I'm so grateful because sometimes when you're just like, you just need to talk it out to be like,
Yeah.
okay, yes, it's moving in the direction that I intended, and
Yes.
I just want to like hone in a little bit more on the questions. But it seems that like
Sure.
it seems that it's all there, and the visuals are such a great help, because I'm a very tactile person, and so
Right.
like I feel like even just having that
Right. And that's, what is it? SYN?
YN, yeah, it's
Right.
cosine. Yeah.
Okay. So I meant to make this darker. I don't think I have a bigger marker here, but the idea is this piece here, and it doesn't have to be blue. It's whatever, I
Yeah.
mean, whatever colors you want to use, but this part here is really bold, right?
Yeah.
And that this is really grayed out. It's sort of like a watermark. It's just it's your logo, but that you can write on top of. So if you wanted to, even if you had a couple of little marks here, but you're gathering information about what they're saying about themselves. They're talking about their joy, what they eventually want to get to. And then maybe, maybe some hurdles or some challenges down here. And this is something that you could draw either by hand or digitally, put it in a layer behind, like just a layer on your PowerPoint, and then you can have little text boxes that are already there that you type into as they're talking. Or maybe you take your own notes and you're like, I'm going to take, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things that we talk about and give it back to them in this way.
And what's your experience with like when doing discovery calls for life coaching, where like there's so much emphasis on like, like looking at the person and their body language and all that stuff, but like you're like kind of like you're looking down because you're writing or you're drawing. Like, what's your experience? How do people take that?
So sometimes I'll say I'm taking notes. So if I look down, I'm just taking notes. That's if I'm doing it by hand. Sometimes I know that it's a really high stake thing and I need to build trust, and I will write, and they're never going to see this. So I'm writing on a piece of paper and I'm literally writing blindly. I'm not even looking at what I'm writing. So it's going to be hard to read later, but I am just writing and I am making eye contact with the camera. Now I have next to my camera, I don't know if you have like a little dot, like a light that's next to your camera.
Kind of. Yes, I do.
You're in so
Yeah.
I look at that dot. I'm looking at that dot right now. Right.
Okay.
And I also have, this is more about tomorrow in terms of delivery, but I also have these little stickers here that remind me when I'm using, I have this app that it shows these little visuals that come up this way. And when I do that, it's mirrored. So these little things here are telling me where to point my hand and where to move. So I have to move out of the way because it's opposite. Oh, and by the way, I have to use my hand to go like this to point at something. So I have these little cues, these little notes next to me. And when I first started using my document camera, I would put down painter's tape right outside the edge so I knew what was my live area, because it took me years to get used to where's my workspace. What part am I working on? And so there's a couple of things you can do there. Now, if I were typing, I would put my document at the very top of my screen and make sure that I can see what I'm typing so it looks like I'm looking at them. And I would put that right below the camera at the top of my screen. Sometimes when I'm reading from a script, I'll have it at the very top and I'll make the document really narrow so that my head's not moving and my eyes aren't traveling too far.
Yeah, that is like right now I'm looking at the side of I can see I usually don't have my camera on because I look at myself and I'm like, no, I should be looking at it.
Right.
But now I have it on because he's pulling. So I'm like, oh yes. I'm like, so maybe like that's something for tomorrow, like how to set things up. Like I love that. And I think you mentioned something about Zoom doing some of the things that Prezi was doing. Now it's incorporated, but maybe we can talk about that tomorrow.
Yeah. And we can talk about that tomorrow. Yeah, absolutely. And we can test it as well. But so I'm curious from you, what's your key takeaway from here? Is there anything here that you're going to be able to use right away? or that
Yes,
you're going to think about? Yeah.
I think that what I want to do is I want to create the visual template. I love that it's all in one page. And like, I want to like write down the questions to that that I make sure that I ask.
Yeah.
So like, I really love that. Like I didn't realize how much of a visual person I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I am going to basically outline the agenda, like, so that it has like the things that I need.
Yeah.
So like the questions that I want to ask, and it's okay if folks see it, like,
right.
And I'm gonna figure out like, I'm gonna test it out, like, and see if like it's better like that they see it, or like, but at least like I will have the questions that I want to ask. Like this document is like, it's 2 pages long. Like it's too long. So this
you can
was
make
like
it really short. Yeah.
This
and
is so helpful.
If you put the actual question there, a couple of different things are going to happen. Your client's either going to see the question and anticipate you're going to ask it, and that gives them a little time maybe to think about it. Or after the fact, when you give it to them, whether they see you do it or not, they might say, you know what else gives me joy? They might think about it longer. And that again is another lasting impression that you're having with them, because you've given them this physical thing they get to walk away with. And I think that's what is really valuable, is that they walk away with a tool that, you know, you make sure you copyright it, put copyright in your name in the year.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
I'm not into policing any work, so I don't go after anybody, but I would put something like that so that, you know, they understand that this is your questions, your process. And having your logo on there not only is great for branding, but again, it reminds them that this is you. This isn't the other 2 people they talk to and are interviewing to be their coach, if they happen to be doing that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, this is great. And right now, like, most of the people that I'm coaching are people that I know. I mean, and I have like, so I'm like, I'm thinking like, and so like we already have a relationship, or at least we know each other. So I'm like, how do I bring that into conversations with folks that I don't know?
Right.
So this is like a really exciting way to like explore that. So thank you so much.
Good,
I feel like super full right now.
Okay, good. I'm glad you're full. Haiti, how are you feeling? And is there anything that you listened to or heard here that could help you or got you thinking about what you might be working on?
It was really interesting to follow when Juana was talking and you were drawing the first like discovery map.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one.
Notice I didn't get it right the first time. I had to ask more questions. I had to ask more questions. I had to ask more questions to finally get to this. And it takes time. And so take that time. It's meaningful time to get to know what the needs are for your client or for yourself or whatever you're designing. Yeah. So when you said it was interesting watching me do this, I'm sure it is, because I love watching other people who do this. Was there anything here that that you could use right away, or that would inspire you to think about something, either process, question I asked, anything?
I was more in like thinking that I would like to, like, I do visual notes, but I really would like to do more like this when taking notes.
Yeah. And so if you want, I can give you access to my sketchnoting class. It's broken up, I think, into 3 different parts.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I already have it.
Oh, you already have it. Okay.
Yeah.
I have another class. It's called Listen, Letter, Draw. Do you have that one?
Yeah.
You do? Heidi, are you like one of my best customers?
I am.
You are. Well, you've just earned yourself another 1-to-1. Okay. So I'll give this to Shohana if you want it. It's a sketchnoting class. And there's another class called Listen, Letter, Draw. And the listen is about the different lenses or filters that we listen for and the visuals that can go with them. So it's a very specific process. But anyway, my hope is that, Haiti, you got something from listening to Shohana, and Shohana, what did you gain from listening to me working with Haiti?
I really love that map with the goal and like the actions. I think that that could actually be something that I could use for the midway checkpoint.
Mhm.
I really love that. I mean, it's so versatile. Like it's like, okay, well, like checking up on 3 things. Like,
Oh my gosh, I use it
yeah.
all the time. And it was easy for me to draw because it's a go-to, and I truly do use it all the time. And I wanted to
Mhm.
introduce, I didn't do this in the first session, though I
Mhm.
usually do, but a couple of resources in case you're interested in it. When it comes to appreciative inquiry, if you don't already have it, this book, okay, Change at the Speed of Imagination, is really based on change management and organizations, but I think it's excellent. It's one of my favorite. And then as far as visuals go, if you just want to learn a couple of icons, or not a couple, hundreds, there's a school in Germany called Vocablo. Have either of you heard of Vocablo? Yeah, so Heidi has, Johanna hasn't, but Vocablo has several books of just very simple icons. And they have online classes where they teach you how to draw all of these and use them in methodology. But they're pretty easy to copy because they're very simple shapes. And in one of these, I think they have a book about templates as well. But one of these books, and I bet it's similar. Here we go. Here's a roadmap, but it's vertical. But it's the same idea of starting somewhere and what are the steps that you're going to go to. So again, another really great, if you're working on flip charts or paper, just some layouts that are very simple that you can add to your repertoire. And if you're working a lot with emotions, they have a book about emotions and how to make people have, even though none of these, well, there's some faces here, but a lot of these images don't have faces. How do we draw bodies to show different emotions? And it's not something you'd have to draw over and over again. There's like a stick figure and then more of a full body, but it's something that you could draw once and have on a PowerPoint, or draw, and maybe it's your go-to person that you always draw. Yeah, I was just looking to see if I can find I have a favorite one where they're looking inside of themselves and they're looking at their heart, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it. Anyway, yeah, so those are Vocablo is just a wonderful resource. And then as you grow, we call these lettering, or not lettering, we call those icon libraries. Grow your own. So you might have a sketchbook or something where you are creating, and this is in really light blue, but where you're creating just some layouts for yourself for upcoming sessions. So all of these are just very basic layouts that I came up with that tend to be my go-tos. Now, I prepared for an entire event, so each one of these is for a different speaker. And so this is the way I would prepare. I would have a little piece of paper for each chart that I'm about to do. And then, so this is on the left, and then on the right, I have, what time it is. Maybe this is the title of the agenda item. Maybe this is the person that's going to run it. Who knows? All these other numbers were probably like, this is number 2 on the agenda. This is number 4. And then guess what? It changed, right? Because that happens. So these were actual pieces that I would take with me to my jobs and be like, okay, I'm going to draw this out. And I either had it already drawn out or I was going to draw it out on the fly. So those are like totally prep work. And sometimes it's just motifs. I'm going to draw just a landscape, and then I might throw some other things in there. That's more of a template. But sometimes they're just me practicing drawing. And this was an award winner. So that's the only thing I'm going to draw in there. And then they're going to say a bunch of stuff and I'm going to fill it in the middle. But to move on from that, you might also, if you're working with markers, you might also need to create color palettes. And so this is something that I would do. This was actually for the Navy. And so I was working with another visual practitioner, and I would make this up and take a picture of it and say, these numbers correspond with the ink colors. And I would say, bring these inks tomorrow. So this was just the way I would work. And I would come, there's all the keynotes for that event are going to be that color. These were all just different color palettes that I've come up with. And then at one point, this was the extent of my lettering. I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now I have about 24. But anyway, the idea was this was my lettering library. Like, these are the lettering styles that I'm going to work in. And then icons. So you might have recognized her in that flip chart. I've drawn her 100 times. I don't draw her very often. She's a kid, so I don't draw kids very often. But sometimes you got to draw a foot. So I had to get the anatomy right. But it's just about creating your own library of colors. Oh, here we go. Skin tones. So these were the different skin tones and styles and faces that I would draw. And some of them I would draw more frequently than others. And then the colors that I was using to help me at that time. This was a different marker system that I don't use anymore, but this really became helpful when I wanted to draw diversity. These were my go-to people because I didn't want to have to think about what people look like. I just needed to quickly get them up on the screen. And I only had to draw them one time here, and then I could take them into my job. So creating some kind of a resource of icons, color palettes, lettering styles, and different templates you use. This template that you said that you liked it, I use that all the time. I bet I use it, I don't know, a couple times a month. You know, it's part of, it's ingrained in there. So when you first said, you know, you're not sure what it looks like, test it, try it out. You know, this beautiful idea that we came up with, you're going to expand on it and make it better. You know, but for now, you know, you could get your top 5 things you want to get from your client and sell them your services and done. Great. All right. What questions do you have when you think about, when you see something like this in preparation? Because we're going to talk about delivery tomorrow.
I have questions about like certain icons that I didn't know how to think about.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the preparation, by the way. That was awesome. I'm like, okay, we're gonna have to practice this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have a couple of things like for my my welcome to coaching package that basically what I did is I went through the package and I just made icons for it, and it looks, I really like it.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, we're gonna change that to be more visual. But I was having a hard time with some of the icons, and I wanted to ask you for some ideas.
Sure.
So the first one is I always ask people what their definition of confidentiality is. So I was like, I don't know. I have no idea how to think about that.
I am totally going to cheat and see if there's an index in this Vocablo book, because it's really, I know I've seen something like that in here. And they used to have an index. I hope I didn't rip it out for here we go. Because confidentiality. So sometimes in groups, how do I say this? Sometimes in visual groups, we have what's called graphic jams. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
Where people say, hey, I want to bring in a concept like confidentiality. We write them all on a piece of paper, and then we pull them out of a hat, and then everybody has to draw it.
Oh,
so you might see if you can be a part of a group like that. So I'm going to put Haiti on the spot and say, what do you think of when you think of confidentiality? What image comes up for you?
I would think of maybe a vault is the right
a vault. Yeah. I was thinking a lock, but it's kind of impersonal. So maybe add a heart. I don't know. But yeah, a vault.
Yeah. And the other thing to add in terms of why I ask people is because sometimes people are okay with their stories being shared without identifiable information. So I want to know if that's okay for them, or they're like, you know what, just like don't talk to anybody about it.
Right.
So like when they're like, okay, like it's okay for you to share the lessons, or again the stories without identifiable information. I'm like, what's a visual for that?
So I taught, this is starting to get pretty scribbly, but I taught a class for young women, and the class was supposed to be about boundaries with friends and family. What's okay? What's not okay? Right? What's above the line and what's below the line. And so this was like, okay, it's okay if my friends hug me. It's not okay if a stranger hugs me, right? What do I keep to myself and what do I express to others? So this is myself, or maybe between us. And these things are okay to share. Right? And then,
Yes.
you know, this down here might be, we don't talk about topics, right? We don't talk about my dad. We don't talk about alcoholism. We don't talk about politics or religion, whatever it is that they don't want to talk about. Like, we are not going to talk about that. Like, I'm not okay with that. So you're not going to press it. Right? So they might be topics or triggers. Yeah. So maybe that could be a visual. So I actually had the girls draw themselves and then draw that circle and then say, okay, these are the boundaries that we're going to hold. Yeah. So that's a potential thing. How's that feel?
Yes.
Okay.
I love that. It's like let's decide together what's okay and what's not okay.
Exactly. And sometimes that's just a line. You know, it's literally a line. And
Yeah.
I've seen it used a lot. We do it in culture. We say, okay, when it comes to our culture and behaviors, what's above the line, what's below the line. I was in a session, and it was all men. I was the only woman, and I was facilitating. I was co-facilitating, and this group of men were doing like push-ups during the break and high-fiving each other and saying sexist things. And I went to the other facilitator and I was like, I'm not okay with this. And so we had he literally, I stood in the back of the room and he stood in the front of the room, and he drew this big line across the whiteboard, and he goes, we're going to talk about what's okay and what's not okay in our behaviors in the next 3 days. Cause we were going to have 3 days with each other. In the first hour, I was like, this is not, I do not even want to be here. This is a whole bunch of, I don't want to do that. Cause yeah, I was being treated not well. And so we set it like in the first day, half day. And then after that, they were fine. But sometimes we have to get really clear about what's okay and what's not okay. Yeah.
That's super helpful.
All right. Super.
Yep, you're muted.
I know you're both full, right? I hope so. I hope you had a good time today. We're going to talk more tomorrow about some really geeky things. We're going to geek out on technology. We're going to geek out on the different tools you can use. So bring your questions if you have that, about delivering, about presenting, about how do I want to show up and how do we get that out there. And then we'll have office hours on Fridays if you can make it. If not, I'll also put out a doodle. I'm going to put everything up on a website so you have access to it. Current stuff that we've talked about, and also the past, all the resources that we've gathered so far. And we'll set up another time for another office hour so that you have that. And Heidi, I look forward to working with you more, because I need to go back and look. I bet if you have those 2 classes, I bet you have more than that. So yeah, good.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to see your lettering. Uh-oh. Uh-oh, she's going to show us. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm going to spotlight you. Let's see it. Nice. Okay. How did you get those rounded terminals? The ends of your letters, your L. How did you get that rounded? Is this digital?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to know how to do it with a marker?
Yeah.
Okay, so I just discovered this weekend. Do you have a big one art marker, a big one brush? Doesn't have to be white.
Yes.
You cut the tip of it off. So
No!
do you want to see me do it?
Yes.
Okay, I'll do it. And then I have to go. Okay, let me remove your spotlight and share my screen. Oh my gosh. I'm looking at the time. If you have to drop off, I totally understand. We can also do this tomorrow if you want to cover some of these types of things. I'm just gonna grab one of these. That's yellow.
I want to see it now.
You want to see? I bet you do. You won't be able to sleep if you don't. There's
exactly
brown.
Because it's 10 o'clock here, so
oh my
I
gosh.
I can't have a cliffhanger now.
All right. So, Shohana, are you familiar with the Neuland markers at all?
I just watched your first video about it, and I'm totally not. I don't know anything about this, so
okay.
I'm
just
excited to learn, though.
Okay, so Neuland markers are refillable, and the nibs are replaceable, so they never have to go in. They never have to go in the bin. So when you open a big one, you hold it like this, and then you pop the end off with your thumb. That's just for the big one markers, and those come in a brush, which looks like this and makes beautiful, let's see. Thicks and thins when you do brush lettering. Okay. So that's a brush marker. But because, and all I'm going to do here is I'm just going to cut this very tip off. What inspired me, first of all, I have a really sharp pair of scissors. That didn't really work so great. We'll see if this works. This is replaceable, so I can always put a new one on. Now, Haiti had rounded terminals, which means the very end of her letters were rounded, right? So if I were to write, and the only reason why I can't write faster is because this doesn't have a lot of ink in it and I'm really pushing down. Now we can get these rounded terminals by drawing straight up and down, and this should be totally flat, but it's pretty messed up. This just wasn't sharp.
Looks really nice.
What's that?
That looks really nice.
Oh, no, I did it better this weekend when I was doing this, but the idea is, and you don't have to have a white marker. This comes in all kinds of colors, but the idea is the end is rounded. And some people like that, and some people don't like that as an aesthetic, but this is just a hack. So you can do all kinds of things with these nibs to hack them because you can take it out and put in a new one and not worry about it. So Heidi, I'll finish your name. Haiti, I'll finish your name. You do have to go a little slower just so that you have nice starts and stops. But yeah, there you go.
Thank you. This one I will practice.
Yeah.
This is very good because it's very clean and I really need really clean.
Yeah. Yeah. And there are people who they're very straight line, clean lettering artists. And I'm a little expressive. So I tend to don't go for perfection, but yeah, that particular hack was a fun one.
That's good because then there will be a connection between what I do with a brush marker and on the iPad.
Exactly. Yeah. Now you can start to have some continuity in your style. Yeah. Good. All right. Well, we'll see you all tomorrow. Thank you so much. Bring your questions. All right.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.